Hey, hey. I gotta tell this story. Get it off my chest. Hi, Raymond Santana. How are you? See if a few more people pop in, then I'll tell the story. I'm feeling better now, but I was a little creeped out last night. I'm doing well. Busy work day, Monday. Kind of gloomy outside, but I'm doing well. Can't complain. Especially can't complain after that. I'll give it about 1 more minute and I'll tell the story. It's not like a super gruesome story or anything like that, but I'll explain what happened. So I'm not gonna be on here long because I had a work day and I still have some stuff I need to do. So, and I'm still in work clothes. I need to change and get comfortable. But I was like, I have to get the story off of my chest. I just told my parents today. I was telling them about it. And then yesterday when it was happening, I was texting my friends, but I will tell the story. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and tell the story because I don't want to be on here long, but it's not a long story. So welcome in anybody that's tuning in, and if you're catching the replay, hey. So okay, so let me tell the story of what happened. So yesterday I was kind of just relaxing. Hey Joseph, how are you? I know it's been a while. I haven't been doing it as much. I need to get back on it. So yesterday I was sitting right here where I'm sitting right now, and I was just kind of relaxing, thinking about today because I was just trying to prepare my brain for being around people at work and stuff like that. So I was just kind of relaxing, and I heard talking outside of my window, and so I looked out, and there was this older black woman and her, I don't know if it was her daughter. It looked like it could have been her daughter, but she was a grown adult too. Both of them were grown women. So I hear them talking, and the younger one is going like up and down the steps, knocking on the door. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Joseph. So the younger one is going up the steps, knocking on this door. So they the neighbor lives across from me. So I hear one of the ladies going up and down the stairs, knocking on the door. Then she's on her phone, dialing a number. The older lady is like kind of standing, and I think at some point she goes up and knocks on the door. But then an officer walks up to them, and I guess they start explaining whatever to them. I couldn't hear them really at that time. So the officer goes up the steps and knocks on the door, and there's no response. So at that point, I'm like, okay, they must be doing a wellness check, because it seems like they're trying to get a hold of somebody that's supposed to be there, and the person's not answering. So I was like, it must be some kind of wellness check. So then a second officer came, and they both were knocking on the door, trying to see if someone would respond. And then I still saw the younger one was on the phone. So then a little bit of time passed by, and the officers kind of walked away for a moment, and then they came back, and they had the fire department with them. They had like 2 firemen, and then I think it might have been an EMS as well, and then probably like 2 or 3 officers. So they all walk up the steps, and they knock on the door. Nobody's answering. They keep knocking, and I think at that point they were yelling the person's name, because I think the lady that was the mom, of course, they told them the person's name. So they're knocking on the door. Nobody answers. So I'm looking out my window watching all this unfold, and just like, oh my gosh, it was like a little movie scene, because it's like I hope this person's okay. Like maybe the person's just not there, not at home. Like hopefully something else is the case. But so then I see the guys from the fire department, they start taking the bolts off the door. So they're basically, at this point, they're about to enter the house. So I'm like, okay, there must be reason enough for them to do that, for them to think that something is wrong. So they take the bolts off the door, and they go in. Then the younger woman, when they go in, she walks up the steps trying to go in, and one of the officers comes out and tells her that the person is deceased that's inside. And so she immediately comes back down the steps crying and like wailing, like, oh my gosh. And she gets on the phone with somebody. The mom at this point was kind of looking stunned, and she walked up the steps and requested that they let her in to see her son. So it was her son that was in there, and he was deceased. So it's kind of creepy and also surreal, like to think you're living your day-to-day life like normal, and while you're living your day-to-day life, somebody has taken their last breath just across the way from you. So it was real surreal, and just kind of like gave me the chills, because I was like, I've never seen that happen before. Because I mean, I've had, of course, family members pass away. My own sister passed away. And so I've been around bodies, unfortunately, when family members pass away and stuff like that. But it was just surreal to know that somebody had passed away alone, and that somebody had to do a wellness check to see if they were okay. But then I also thought about like how important it is to have people in your life, and to also tell people if you're dealing with something. So apparently he had been in the hospital with heart issues just a few days before, and they had discharged him back home. And I guess the mom, and I believe the other lady might have been his sister, they were communicating with him, and I guess all of a sudden communication stopped. So that's what made them come and see what was going on, because they couldn't get a hold of him, and he wasn't answering his phone. And so it was like probably 3 hours later, they had the officers, once they checked into everything, and I guess they asked them a bunch of questions, they kind of determined that yeah, like life and death happen every day, Joseph, for sure. And it's like sometimes you don't even know what's happening, because you're busy living your day-to-day life, and it doesn't always affect you. Hey, CJ Charisse. Sometimes you're living your own day-to-day life, and you don't realize that it affects you, and then until it affects you, I mean. But so the police officers, the fire department, they leave, and they leave the mom and the sister to basically call the funeral home. So they were outside calling and making arrangements for somebody to come and pick up the body. So they didn't, I mean, by the time they got here to pick up the body, it was three hours, almost 3 hours later. It was already dark. And so they finally arrived, and I saw them bring the body out in the bag down the steps, put the body on the gurney, put the cover over it. But it was creepy and surreal, but I also felt so bad for that mom. Because I can't imagine, like, let's say, like, you're talking to a family member who has just been ill, and then all of a sudden you can't reach them. They're not answering the phone. Then you go to their house and you can't get a response. And then you call the police to come and do a wellness check, and they discover that the person's passed away. Like, it has to feel horrible because you're, like, the person passed away alone. Yeah, it happened yesterday. I was just kind of like, whoa. But I didn't really know that neighbor, but he hadn't lived in there very long, because when I first moved here, there was an older man that was my neighbor, like this older white man. He used to always, at that time I was still a teacher, he used to always bring me like stuff to take my students and all that stuff. But that apartment over there had only been like, people were in and out. But so he hadn't lived there long, but so I didn't know him, but I was just like, whoa. So that was my story about seeing a body being taken out of a house. But it was sad because they had obviously been trying to get a hold of them and they couldn't, so they showed up. I was just thankful that somebody showed up. Yeah, it's crazy. I was thankful that somebody showed up to check on them, because I heard in like a couple years ago, I was reading something in the news about this this one man they found him in his apartment or something, house or something, and it had been months before they found him, before somebody actually realized that he was like missing or something. But he had been in his house deceased for like months. So I was just like, I'm glad that this guy had family that was in communication with him enough to know that something was wrong. But they said it was a heart issue. So apparently he fell out in his house. So I don't know, maybe heart attack, but they said he had been in the hospital for a heart issue. And so I guess that's how the mom and the sister knew about it. Yeah. So I know when I told my parents about it, they were like, that's why it's important that you always like let us know. And I do, like, if I'm traveling or something like that, or if I'm going somewhere, I always let people know like what I'm doing. And I always let them know when I'm coming back. But yeah, it's good. And I think even if for those who do live alone, like telling people, if you don't hear from me on social media for several days, or if you don't hear from me like on whatever it might be, then let me know. Because I mean, these days people work from home and all these different things. Like for me, my job is partly remote, but I also go out and work. So, but I mean, if you think about it, like somebody might work at home, they may not have a lot of people, it's like, that may check up on them. Right, come and find me, for real. For real. Like to me, you feel so bad. Like last night, I felt so just kind of bothered by it, that when I went to bed, like I slept with my light on. I felt creeped out. I felt just like, I don't know, I just had the chills about it. But it's just the whole thought about somebody went through that by themselves and had to be discovered like that. But I don't know, I felt bad for the mom and the sister. I don't know if it was his dad, but some man showed up probably like an hour after they discovered him. I guess somebody called him on the phone to let him know, and he showed up with somebody else. So they were there waiting all that time. But yeah, I was like, man, and it's still kind of eerie and bothersome to like every time I walk past that place, because it's like, but I just hate that that happened, because he had, I mean, looking at his mom, but you know, black don't crack, but looking at his mom, she didn't look super old. Like she looked like she could be like my mom's age. So and like the lady, that other lady that was with them, she looked like probably in her 40s. So I'm like, he couldn't have been a super old person. So that's just unfortunate. Yeah. Prayers to the family. But they were picking up his stuff today and all that. But I just know that that's hard. But I was texting my friends when it was happening. I was like, oh my goodness, I think I'm witnessing a wellness check. And I said, I don't think the person's alive. It just seemed like that's the path it was going down. And it ended up being what happened. But yeah, so that's the body story. But, and I don't know why I sat and watched them bring the body down the steps. Like it was, they had, of course they had the body wrapped up in a body bag, but I don't know, it was like watching a movie. As much as I didn't want to see it, I was still watching. And I'm like, why did I do that? Because then I was like sad for the family. And I know that I'm very much like an empathetic person, so I'll feel other people's emotions and pain. I'm like, why am I making myself go through this? I should have just closed my blinds and closed my window instead of being nosy and trying to see what was going on. But I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. And then just still watching it take place. But yeah, I was thinking about that family all day today, especially the mom. Because that's no parent. I know my parents will say it all the time, like, because when my sister passed away, like, no parent wants to lose a child before they leave the world. And I know that's hard for them to know that that happened, especially since he had been in the hospital. So they were probably wishing they had came to check on him sooner, but you can't beat yourself up about it. They said that the emergency text, they basically said that they thought he probably had only been passed away probably less than 24 hours. So, I mean, there's no way they could have known that that was going to happen. Yeah, and then the officers, they left her there, her and her daughter, because once they do a little bit of questioning and investigation, they realize that the person died of like an illness or something like that, they leave. And so you're just there. You have to just call a funeral home. It's not like if it would have been something where they suspected like foul play, they would have called out a detective and all that stuff. But they already knew what happened because of the issue that he was having. So I was like, oh, but yeah, so hopefully it'll get off my mind. But every time I have walked by, I'm like thinking about, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. But hey, Bayou, how are you? What is this music that's playing? Hold on, let me change. Oh, I know. I need to watch something funny for sure. No, last night I was so bothered by it. I drank like 2 glasses of wine and then I tried to go to bed. I didn't fall asleep right away. It took me probably about an hour or so to fall asleep after I laid down. I was trying to like quiet my brain. But yeah, it was kind of my fault for paying attention to everything that was going on. But I don't know. It was a lot. How are y'all doing on this Monday? I'm about to get off here in a moment because I'm tired. Yeah, it was right across the way. Like, I'm sitting right here and there's a window right here. And just like, I don't know how many feet that would be. Just across the way. Yep. So, but he apparently had heart issues. He had been in the hospital recently. They released him home, and then after that, his mom couldn't get a hold of him, so they showed up to check on him, and there was no response. They were calling his phone, he wouldn't answer. So they called the police to do a wellness check, and um, that's when they discovered that he was gone. But yeah, and then too, like, you hear so many stories with police officers. It was good to see how nice that they were being with this family, because I mean, sometimes wellness checks don't go well. Like, you call the officers to come and help you, and they end up hurting somebody. It's like, so I'm glad that they were treating that family well. Definitely being grateful for life. If anything, it's just like your small little problem that you think is a problem is nothing compared to the fact that somebody didn't wake up. So that's definitely a reminder. Oh yeah, I could hear everything, and so then I'm like watching the whole thing take place, and then feeling horrible for the family, but then also like the curiosity of it all, which I should have closed. Once I knew what was going on, I should have closed the blinds and like went to another room and not even been worried about it, because then I couldn't sleep and I was just thinking about it and it was on my mind. But it's crazy because I think where the curiosity part comes from, because I used to always tell people I would love to be a detective, but the only reason why I wouldn't be a detective is because I wouldn't want to have to like go through all the training of it. And also, I like being alive, so I wouldn't want to have to risk like somebody coming after me because I'm a detective or whatever it might be. But but that's why I love like crime shows and stuff, like trying to figure out what's going on in cases. So I think that's where the uh, curiosity part came in. But then I was feeling really bad for the family, so I should have just closed the blinds because I knew it was gonna bother me, and I shouldn't have been involved. And that's another reason why I couldn't be in that field, because I probably would be taking work home with me, like emotionally, because I don't know, like I'm very much an empath. I could feel people's emotions, and then it makes me feel bad. Yeah, and thankfully this wasn't a crime. I was happy about that. Like, not happy that the person is deceased, but I definitely bit off more than I could chew because I couldn't handle it. So I'm like, yeah, I couldn't handle that profession. That's why I didn't want to be a doctor and nurse. Like, my mom used to want me to be a nurse because she wanted to be a nurse. And I went to go like spend some time with the nurse at a hospital. And I was like, how do you do this every day? I would be depressed. No. Oh yeah, that's cool by you. Well, and then a couple years ago, I was looking up job descriptions, and there was this federal position for detectives, and they investigate like the education system. Because y'all know, like, I used to be a teacher, so like I thought, oh, this would be cool. Um, but they have to go through the same training process as like police officers, and like they have to do all that like kind of boot camp stuff too. And I was like, to investigate school districts, a mortician, I couldn't do that. I'm not really bothered. Like, if it's a family member that I loved and care about, like, I'm not bothered about like being around a body. But when it's just, I can't, I couldn't do that. Mm-mm, no. But that's a good business for people. One of my coworkers, she's an older lady. She used to be a mortician. She used to work for a funeral home. I couldn't do it. You thought about CSI or a bounty hunter? Nah. And see, like, I like trying to figure out cases and stuff. That's why I said I would love to be a detective, but I can't handle it. No. Like, you have to be able to like turn on and off a switch, because you have to have some element of care, but you also have to be able to turn it off. Because I mean, they deal with a lot. Or even I felt bad for even these like poor firemen and like police officers, because sometimes, unless you have a lot of those situations happen, like they may not even be used to that. Right? Yeah. And then I don't want people after me either. Because I was happy when one of my friends, and I'm sure his wife was happy too, one of my friends that I grew up in my hometown, or he grew up in my hometown, was an officer in Las Vegas. And he got injured, but it wasn't like a crime injury or anything. He just, I think they were dealing with somebody and he hurt his leg or something like that. And he ended up being on leave and then decided he didn't want to go back because so much was starting to happen to officers and stuff like that, people targeting them and stuff like that. So I was happy that he decided to not be an officer anymore. Though he's probably somebody they need, because he's actually a good person. But I was happy that he wasn't. But yeah, I couldn't do that. But yeah, that was my craziness yesterday. But I wonder how, because there's people that live much closer to that place than I do. So I'm sure they were probably a little freaked out by it. Yeah, and these days there's so many of them that you can't trust. So, don't got time for that. But yeah, I appreciate y'all for stopping in and hearing my story. But I feel better than I did last night, but it's still a little bothersome. But I told my parents about it today. I was talking to them about it. But yeah, they were just saying the importance of people. Because I have an aunt, she's kind of like, I don't know, I probably shouldn't say this, but I doubt she'd ever watch my YouTube. Who knows? I'm not gonna say that story. But there's somebody in my family that is kind of like stays home all the time and doesn't answer the phone when people call. And so like my mom was saying, like, people got to stop doing that. Like, people are calling to check up on you, answer the phone, because what if something does happen and then they just think that you're not answering the phone, but no, you might really be having an emergency, but they don't know that because you never answer your phone. So they just think you're doing that again. So it's like, especially if you live alone, it's like, don't do that. So, but yeah. But yep, y'all. So definitely have people to check on you, and definitely live each day like it is your last, and appreciate life because somebody did not wake up today. By you, we all have a person in our family. That's true. That is true. Well, y'all, I know it's a Monday evening, so I'm about to get off, but I was like, I didn't tell y'all that story. I feel like I just have to tell people so I can start to feel better, just get it off my chest, because I was like, oh, this is crazy. But it was my fault. I shouldn't have sat there and watched it. You know, Black folks, we be nosy. Be like those old ladies peeping out the window trying to see what's going on in the neighborhood. But I should have, once I knew what was going on, I should have closed the blinds. But y'all have a good night. Good night, CJ. Good night to Sharice. Good night, Bayou. Good night, Joseph. Good night. Who did I miss? Raymond Santana. All right, y'all. Well, y'all have a good night. Thanks for listening to my story. And hopefully the rest of the week goes off better than all of this. Because that wasn't the only thing that happened, but that was one of the things that happened. But yeah. Bye, y'all. See y'all.